cool, bro. I love a word that I picked up over the last year is like, here's a kicker. I love that word. Here's a kicker.
Here's a kicker for you.
Yeah, or a home hitter.
Casper, thanks so much for joining me today. It was a difficult process that we just went through to get this whole audio set up, but I'm glad that we're able to sit down so synchronistic, and able to have this conversation today about touching the soul. What I've known for who you are, you've only been in my life for about 2 months, I think.
Yeah,
Just
maybe
about
like a month and a half.
yeah,
a
not
month
even,
maybe.
because you came to my house opening, and
Yeah,
I had that house opening. I've been at the house for 2 months now. So, and it was 2 or 3 weeks after that I got the house that I had that opening. So it's like we've only known each other for about a month and a week or so, and it feels like I've known you for a long time. So it's pretty awesome to be able to be in your life, and you had this really interesting history of your healing. I don't know much about your healing process, and I've never actually talked to you about that. And so I'm glad we're able to sit down about this now. And so you said you've been on this healing journey for 5 years now?
well, it was kind of like how the whole thing started, and I think this is how it starts for a lot of people. Is that in 2017 I got really deep into depression. I experienced panic attacks. I started having a lot of chronic illnesses, and everything was just kind of like crashing down on me from every single angle. And I was experiencing like tension in all my relationships, and it was just a really dark year. Then another 2 years passed, and then I went traveling around Asia, and I was just like, oh, Asia just really needs to save my life. And then another year went by, and then like in 2021, oh wait, I have to think. 2021, I'm sitting having lunch in Bali, and I remember these moments so vividly. And I'm sitting having my lunch at my yoga retreat, and I'm just chilling, and then I hear this voice being like, imagine your soul as like a house, and you access this house. And that was like the first time this healing journey really took a completely different turn. And since then, it's been like 3 years exploring trauma, experiencing and purging through past lives and understanding like the whole way everything comes together. So it's a really hard journey to conceptualize from a mental perspective. Like I can explain it to you, but it's more so like an emotional, energetic journey. So it's like I don't think I've ever really gone into detail with anyone about everything because there's just so much, and nothing really makes sense until you actually like jump into it and start unwinding it for yourself. So that was like 3 years ago was when I then what I've decided to call, or what came to me later, was like the Atlas program, which is essentially like a process of accessing all of your past lives and all of your soul history, and it goes beyond trauma, and it goes beyond getting rid of anxiety. It's like it's so much more. It's about becoming back into union with your soul.
Mm. Yeah, you've had this really intense journey from what it sounds like. There's such an interesting storyline that each of us have with our connection with the soul, and like our own connection with our soul. And then the way that our life has come to understand what our soul is, who our soul is. There's an intense process that it goes through to really look into that and be so inside of yourself. And it seems like you've gotten to a place where you let your soul kind of almost make decisions. It's not you making decisions. It's not Casper making decisions. It's your soul, whatever your soul's name is. Have you figured out what your soul's name is?
I think the name came to me, which if I remember correctly, was Asaya.
Asaya?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. It's so amazing to see how in touch you are with your soul. And some, I would say, is, there's this aspect of people talking about their soul, especially in Western culture. It's kind of like just like a fantasized illusional talk. It's not actually knowing that your soul is something that you can actually be in communication with. It's just like, oh, I have a soul. We're multidimensional beings, or we're just beings that are part of something way bigger than ourselves. And this is, I mean, it has a lot to do with spirituality and religion, and kind of bringing that together. And I told you about this the other day, where I come to understand religion as your relationship with God, and spirituality as your soul, your relationship with your soul. And this is something, when you put together, you really start to create such a powerful life, being able to tap into the self and be really synchronistic. There's this word that you love to use, and you're tapping into your intuition. But there's times where it goes wrong, right? Is there times when you actually feel like you're out of your soul, or if you always, ever since like you've been on this healing journey, you've been able to seriously tap into it and now be living as your soul? As
I think to like put the premise for the conversation is like, I see the soul as like, if the soul is like non-physical, right? It's just like floating in the ether. And the human, you as like Sam and me as Casper, like we are the car to which the non-physical ourselves is experiencing its life through. So we are the car driving on the road, and through the car and through the cracks in the car, like when we get a crack, the soul can experience that as like a crack. It's like we are the car that allows the soul to experience itself in physical expression. So I think like there's times where like I'm in the past where I would be more in touch with my intuition, and times where I would less be in touch with my intuition. But for me, it's more like I I came to this point in my life where like my intuition was the only answer forward. There was no like, should I do this or should I do that? Like I've been on this healing journey for the last 3 years. But what I've also done is like I've been traveling the world for the last 3 years. And I think when I talk about my traveling around the world, people be like, oh, that must be really nice. And I'm like, the healing journey was what we were doing. We were just in different places around the world as part of our healing journey, not the other way around. So for us, it was like, if we're going to go somewhere, it was only one place. We didn't decide on 10 different places to go. There was always one place, and the next place unfolded the next place, and then the next place, and then the next place. And we only knew one step ahead. We never knew, what's going to happen in 3 months, in 6 months, in 2 weeks. It was only like, okay, we woke up, inspiration, let's go to Mexico. We went to Mexico, landed in Mexico. Okay, next inspiration came. It was never like a whole list of inspiration. It was like, you act on one inspiration, this unlocks the next one. To act on the next one, unlocks the next one. So in sense of like being out of your body, I have experienced dissociating, but that is not the same as maybe what you're referring to, because dissociating is just you kind of feeling too overwhelmed with your human experience, and you kind of like tap out. We feel like you're more in your soul experience than your human experience. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, I mean, what you talk about, these cracks, and we're the vehicle. The body is the vehicle that we're living in, and we're looking through our lenses, which is the windows to our soul, right? The eyes are the windows to the soul, and we're able to see through the rear view mirror. We're able to see through the side mirrors, even the front window and the side windows. We're able to see literally as a vehicle, and then all the cracks. What are these cracks? What does that mean when your soul gets to actually experience that?
It's kind of like you have to understand the relationship between your human self and your soul self. So because your soul self lives in the ether and it can't feel anything, you've kind of taken on this role as a conduit for your soul to be able to experience love, experience hate, experience, you know, trauma, experience eating food, drinking water, bathing, swimming with dolphins, like having this podcast. Like, this is our humans or our human selves acting on behalf of our souls to co-create this moment with us. And I think that's like, it takes away this like mysticism around like the soul and the human to being like, our human selves we are the messengers for our souls in all the best ways. We are the ones who get to experience everything, all the fun stuff, and also the hard stuff. But we always have like our whole like higher selves or God or whatever you want to call it. Like, we have them as our support. And they're paying attention and they're making all the decisions to make our life here on earth really amazing once you pay attention to all the magic that is actually unfolding for you.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting to witness the soul as something that is part of you, but it's just the higher power, and the human is the actual part that's experiencing, right? I've heard some people, and I've talked to them about this. I just heard this from, I think, on a podcast or something, and I've come to have conversations with a few people about this. And this is this idea where, I don't know what your idea is about this, but there's this theory people talk about where your soul was first looking at your life, and it's like you can see the human's life as just like kind of a list, and you can see all the things that's going to happen. You get born, you have these parents, you go through this divorce, your parents go through this divorce, and this is what's going on. It's like your life is kind of already set out, and your soul knows about this, right? And it goes in to these big events that are supposed to like be transformational or really hurtful, painful, a lot of suffering or happiness, love. But your soul looks at this and it's like, challenging. I think I can do it. I think that like I would love to experience this. And so having that sort of intention where it's realizing that, yeah, all the stuff that I'm going through right now, I deliberately chose that. Not me as my body or the way that we experience the external reality, but my soul chose that to have those experiences. Have you heard of this kind of theory?
I live by this.
You live by this?
Yeah.
And so is that where this word synchronicities comes up all the time? Because you are like, wow, this is just me falling in line with the things that were synchronistic.
Yeah. It's like synchronistic. It's like there's so many definitions, right? But I like to think about it as like a really simple way of like, it's the universe co-creating another moment with another being or object or whatever, right? So it's like, let's say you're in a car jam and you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're going to be half an hour late to something. That's a synchronicity. You meeting a friend that you haven't seen in 10 years, that's a synchronicity. And you don't necessarily understand why the synchronicity happens, but it's supposed to happen for a reason. But the reason doesn't necessarily have to do always with you, but it can be for other reasons.
For other people too.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like a chain of events in a sort of way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, even if it's so like the example with the car jam, you say, that car jam could have happened. So the synchronicity of someone not getting in a car crash or someone getting hit by a car, right? Is that this kind of thing that you're playing on?
Or just simply just being in a car jam.
Yeah.
They just need a time to themselves. It doesn't always have to have this existential outcome, right? It could just be something as simple. We just need a lot of people to take some time to themselves. Therefore, we create a car jam.
Right. And when you say we, what are you talking about?
Everyone's higher selves, God, like however you want to understand it for yourself, because it's not so important with the definitions and the labels, but it's like whatever makes sense to you. So like for me, it's like, it's my higher self and your higher self like co-created this moment for us to have this podcast. And this podcast was written in the stars way before we decided to have it.
Yeah.
We just didn't know where we're going to have it, maybe when we're going to have it. We just knew it's going to happen, you know? And then, or maybe it was written in the stars when, where, what, how, everything.
Hmm. I love this idea of synchronicities, since it's really, it's a powerful aspect, because when you can come to feel that this is supposed to kind of be here for me, is there any sort of, I guess you could say, delusion that one can come to think of when falling too much into the synchronicities?
I think it comes back to belief and your perspective. Like, if synchronicities make sense to you, then that's the most important thing. If it doesn't make sense to someone else, it's completely irrelevant. What makes sense to you is your truth. What makes sense to someone else is their truth.
Right. We're living by our own truth. There's no set, like, you can talk about what's written in the stars, right? This is like the universe's truth.
Yeah.
But for us as just humans, we can't necessarily experience or know. Well, we have to experience that. We have to experience what's written in the stars. It's not like we can just read it in a book. These types of information comes from experience.
Yeah.
And what do you think are the ways to actually allow yourself to experience and to tap into the soul's experience, to understand your truths that lines in with these synchronicities?
I think like every soul will have their way of arriving at that point. So if the soul is supposed to, like, there's people who are into Akashic records, there's people who are into astrology, there's people who are into breath work, hot plunges, cold plunges. Like, there's so many ways to arrive at a certain perspective or a specific perspective or a specific understanding. And as you go through life, the universe will just orchestrate what you need to learn about what you need to learn. So it's not so much like you can go, there's so many places to go, but the place that is right for you will come to you when you need it or when you're looking for it.
But there's also this aspect of just you as yourself, you know everything already. You're able to tap in to universe's consciousness, source, the divine power of ultimate knowing. That's what flow state is, right?
Yeah.
It's tapping into just an intense amount of concentration and energy. And that's abundant, where it's not necessarily that you come into contact with some sort of, because from what I picked up from what you said on this, it's like you're picking up on an external situation that was come into your worlds, that you all of a sudden witness a book or a person or a podcast or some sort of social media post or any sort of thing that is from the outside worlds that brings perspective and knowledge and wisdom. But in reality, the self needs to be able to tap into that, because technically, based on this, you could say, truth, we should be able to already know these things at this time. But this is something that I'm just coming to understand, is that within these things, there's certain truths, right? And some people, they don't resonate with these truths. And so they don't line up with these truths and call it their truth. And so there's different truths out there that align best with the soul and the self and the current life experience or life situation that someone has been on. And it's like almost connecting the dots in some sort of way. Again, another synchronicity. This is such an interesting concept to look at, and it gives a lot of, like, it in some sort of way, we look at this as determinism. But when we say life is determined, that feels like there's so little power that the self has to create something abundant and wonderful, and to make it feel like we made the choices. We made these decisions. Our souls riding along our journey with us on this. But how it feels like it's powerless to say life is kind of determined, where, I even brought up this whole thing where it's like the soul is choosing the things. It's like, yeah, I want to experience this list. It's to say that it's already determined, right? Where is your kind of, where do you fall in line with this determinism and free will?
I think this has been like a pickle that I thought about a lot in the beginning, but as I moved along this journey, I've come to really appreciate and shift the perspective of like, if I am my soul and the soul is me, when there is no separation, right? So there's no, oh, my whole life is planned out, and that sounds boring, right? Well, maybe I planned out a really, really fun life. I just haven't planned out how I'm going to feel about it. It's kind of like when you play a game, right? You know that the game is going to end up with you defeating the king boss,
Sure.
but you don't know the whole storyline. You
Yeah.
don't know. Let's say you decide that you're gonna become a coach, but you don't know what kind of coach you're gonna become, because it's kind of like life will shift you, and you will be like, oh, I really love this kind of coaching, and it's like the elements is like you have like it's like you carve out the big things, and then you fill in with emotions and inspirations of like it's always like this continuous process. And I think that's the thing is like, if you just be like, I just know that like I'm here and I'm just acting on all the cool inspirations that I have, all the cool people I'm gonna meet, and I get to experience people, and I get to experience Earth from like this emotional, vibrational frequency experience, right? Like the ups and the downs, and being able to eat ice cream, and like all these more trivial aspects. Then I think you kind of like shift your perspective to like life can be really magical, even if a lot of the events in your life have been like I think it really comes back to like your perspective on it. Like, do you think this is exciting, or do you feel like disempowered? And I think that's the pickle. It's like, if you have this notion that you feel powerless and disempowered by this notion that your life is planned out for you, then why do you feel like that? Right? Because you obviously, if you chose your life, you also chose to feel disempowered about that.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's a room for um, for growth, right? Where the whole point's like you felt disempowered, and then maybe the end conclusion, and I don't know, the end conclusion is just one of many, where you feel actually empowered, and you feel excited, and you feel like, yes, I get to experience this. I'm here to experience this. I'm here to make babies with people and make out with people, and drink a lot of alcohol and do fun stuff and travel to Vietnam, and it's like there's just one element that's like making you feel disempowered, but like, what about all the fun stuff?
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that goes on in the world. And it's just the perspective that we look at things, the lens that we look at things through. You talked about intuition there, and we've talked about intuition a few times together. I was really curious on this idea of intuition because I asked you, what is the difference between just an impulse in a decision, or an impulse and intuition, right? Just an urge and an intuition. For example, I asked you, it's like, if I wanted to go up and all of a sudden I just had the urge to want to kiss this person, or to give a hug to this person, or to do this thing for this person, that is just an urge. And if there's any trace of falseness or hesitation or not being 100%, then it's not your intuition speaking. But how does intuition and the soul how do those kind of correlate? Where do they come together?
I think like as you're saying this, I'm realizing also maybe that in that question or in that answer, I also added a little bit more. It wasn't I'm refining the answer because the answer isn't like super like black and white. It's not just like this is intuition, this is not intuition. Like every impulse, it's like, okay, imagine that you're walking on a path and you know like the path forward is the fastest one, but there's like 10 other paths that you can take. And you just be like, oh, feel inspired to do this one. And then you realize this one is more bulky, it takes longer, it's like has less excitement, and it's just really, really like boring. That was an experience you had to have in order to realize what you really wanted. So all of these different impulses and all of these different inclinations are more so, and when I say it's not like a black and white, like this is how it is, but it's more like in a way to kind of like just gauge, which is like every impulse, everything you do in your life is for the purpose of your soul expansion and your soul journey. So maybe you need to walk up to this girl, kiss her to realize that you actually don't want to kiss her.
Mm.
But you didn't realize that until you kissed her. It's like the same thing. Like we start playing sports because, oh, I think basketball is really cool. You go to one practice and you're like, oh, I don't think basketball is that cool, really. But you didn't know that until you tried basketball, right? So it's kind of how we become more in tune with what we really want and need, and then fine tuning this. Like, okay, I really love playing golf. I love only to kiss out with girls that I feel a really strong attraction to. I only want to eat at places that I feel like that I have a good feeling about. Like it's more like fine tuning all these different like ways that you might have a little bit of a fragmented understanding of who you are. So you do all of these things to clear the path. Does that make sense?
Mm. So I even took that away where it's like when you try something and you realize that's something that I needed to learn that I didn't actually want. It's the same thing with doing something for a while and then stopping it and realizing this is something that is fulfilling to me. There's the opposite aspect to it as well. I realized this for the saxophone. I played saxophone right at the beginning of ninth grade and up until 11th grade or so, 10th grade. And I stopped because of what the perception I assumed to be on other people when someone played saxophone. Some nerd, some weirdo, some geek, right? These are the labels that I didn't want to be identified as. It was a self-esteem thing. And eventually now coming to today, it's like, yeah, it actually might be cool to do that. I'm around a lot of musicians and people who play music, and I'm getting this urge to want to bring the saxophone back into my life, but also it's just like a really cool instrument. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you used to play the saxophone. Wow. That's a really amazing thing." And so yes, there's a little taste of that image that's coming back in. But that's the intuition. The intuition was initially me just realizing the absence of it, that I was like, wow, I really enjoy this that I would love to jump back into. This is just an interesting aspect when we look at the intuition, and I'm trying to understand it as best as possible. And from what it is, I mean, could you maybe it's just a little bit more to understand within this link between the soul and the intuition of how these two kind of are intertwined and play together in this role. There's a lot of aspects to it where it seems like the soul is the intuition almost, where the soul is the person based on your spirituality, right? Your relationship with your soul. You're able to then have these intuitions, which is kind of like your soul's calling in some sort of way. Again, it's a synchronicity. So I could say, you could almost even say that synchronicities are the external world kind of corresponding in a way that is helpful for the self to be self-aware, or just to take moment, or whatever it is, the synchronicities that needs to happen. That's like the outside world. And then the intuition is the internal world, having these internal synchronicities of, okay, this makes so much sense for me. This is a download. The intuition is a different way of talking about downloads, right? And so when we're talking about, okay, I had this intuition, I had this download, or I had this feeling, I don't even know where this feeling came from to just want to do this. But a lot of the times, some people have these thoughts, or these intuitions, and they get scared by them. It's like, wow, this is such a big dream or big vision. And it makes them feel really good, right? But that's all they get from it. It's just that experience of making them feel good and to bring it to life. Because you talk about acting on your intuition, especially when you talk about being a custodian in your business. You are the custodian in your business. You're talking about things that are just, you let your business run as it's supposed to be, and you don't necessarily put any hard work into it, or like trying to always analyze and look at different aspects and trying to make it all better and shiny and bright. The only thing you're doing is just polishing. You're the custodian, you're the janitor of this. If it was a brick and mortar, it's like you're the person that's just there cleaning the windows. And whenever a customer walks in your store, or there's people outside, it's like there's a synchronicity, there's an intuition that all of a sudden you're like, maybe I should just, maybe it would be a good time to go and do this. I can put up a sign, I can put up a billboard, whatever that intuition may be. That's completely based on whatever experience that has happened, that is just, again, that's that soul, the divine alignment that's coming down and giving you that download. The download is the thing that is all of a sudden in your head. And then the intuition is the thing that's, it's the feeling that's getting backed up. It's the feeling that's the behind the power. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is just an interesting perspective to kind of move forward in realizing how helpful it is to move on intuitions. But why do you think people not move on intuitions?
I think the paradoxical answer here is that they do without knowing it.
Interesting.
You know, so when maybe to rephrase a little bit, intuition is AKA your soul / God, or whoever, whatever makes sense to you, is talking to you and guiding you. So you not thinking that you're acting on your intuition, you're acting on your mind, is still you acting in a way that is conducive to your journey. So every step you make is always conducive in your journey and towards your journey and towards whatever you decide to experience in this life. So, you know, where you talk about like people being like, this person is awoken, this person is asleep. No, they're not. That's just our labels that we, from some level, trying to make sense of the world, has put them into, saying that one person is spiritual, one is not. But we're all spiritual because we are spirits, all right? So we're just in different parts of our journey, experiencing different things. It's like, of course, if you are a farmer, you're not going to have the inspiration to become an astronaut because it's not conducive to you experiencing farmer life, right? So every experience, every intuition, and like, you know, your soul talking to you is pulling you toward what you decided to do in this life.
From that beginning, like when we're looking back.
From the list, right?
Right.
So it's like if you decided to, for you, right? You decided like in this life, I'm going to play the sax, I'm going to become a coach, I'm going to do so many amazing things. But it all starts with playing the sax, or not necessarily traumas. It just starts with like, you don't know all the events leading up to where you are today, right? So every single event plays an incremental role, but you don't know about the role it plays until you look at it from in hindsight. So I think like the really important thing is like you're always following your intuition, but you don't necessarily have a vocabulary to say that that's what you're doing. You just go about your day. And the paradox is that a lot of people who don't think about them as spiritual and not as like intuitive people, they're actually the most intuitive people. And they're actually always acting on their intuitions. But they'd be like, I read something in the newspapers and it sounded like something I should do.
Yeah.
How did the newspapers end up in your hands?
Exactly.
God.
Huh. God put that situation into your hands to all of a sudden say, okay, here's the newspaper, pick this newspaper up, and now you read something. It's like, okay, so it's also the same thing with like something you see on social media, right?
Yeah.
So maybe, for example, I was on social media yesterday, and I was playing the guitar earlier. I was like, damn, I'm kind of getting bored. I want to learn a new song. I'm on social media really randomly, and the song "Wake Me Up" by Avicii shows up, and I'm like, wow, I love this song, and it's a really easy beginner, and it's a little bit tricky as well. So it's something that is challenging, that is just right at my flow state level, and this is perfect for me to jump into and try something new. I didn't like the aspect or the actual practice, you could say, of being on your phone and scrolling. That's the thing that we put kind of a negative label on. But what if there's a synchronicity that's about to show up, and you chose to already be in that situation? Or maybe it's not even you chose, but there's a synchronicity, there's an intuition, there's a download waiting to happen with every moment that we're just creating on. And so, well, these are already in play. We can't know in the future of what these downloads are going to be, but the best thing we can do is just be open, right? But so then we're just going on this idea that it's already determined, though.
Yeah. And the pull to fulfill your soul plan is stronger than the pull not to.
Yeah.
But you don't know the timeline of this, right? So let's say your whole sax career, right? You started when you were 9 or 9th grade.
Yeah.
And you only picked it up or felt inspiration 10 years. How old are you in 9th grade? Like 14?
Actually, no, I didn't start in 9th grade. I started in like 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah, okay. So let's say 4th grade, right? So like, I don't know how many years are between 4th grade and now, but like, let's say 10 years or something.
Yeah.
And it's like it took 10 years from the first introduction to the first time you want to pick it up again, right?
Yeah.
So you could say, oh, it was 10 years. That's such a long time. But like time is inconsequential.
To the soul, yeah.
To the soul, right? Because it's like you can be here for 2,000 years and that's a blink in the eyes of the soul.
Right.
So it's like even like scrolling for like weeks on your phone is what we claim to be a waste of time. But there is no waste of time. It's just prep time. You know, it's like, do you need 3 years or I don't know how, let's say you need 3 years to become an accountant. Do you really need 3 years? Or it's more like a lot of stuff on your way to become an accountant or learn marketing or become a psychologist or whatever, right? It's like, because we put everything into time, then therefore you are either slow or fast, or it takes too long, it takes too short. But that's completely irrelevant. It's like I've been on my healing journey for 3 years. A lot of the stuff I've learned, I could probably squeeze into a year, but I needed 3 years to finish this.
Right. It's realizing like up to now, you're seeing these big moments for you that were really impactful. You're able to connect the dots backwards. We can't connect the dots forward, right? I mean, there's only experiences and the wisdom that we can kind of understand as the intuition to move forward.
Yeah.
And to know what we should do, like you said, not in a year's time, but just or 3 months time, even when you're talking about your travels, it's just a month or whatever feels right, whatever your soul is telling you, whatever that intuition is, whatever download you're getting. But this idea of moving backwards, of looking at things backwards, there's so much power in that, isn't it? This comes into this idea of regression and the past lives. I've not really come to fully understand this. I've just been introduced to this idea being in Asia, and these are philosophies of the East, or at least of just strong spiritual people that I have communication with. Even when I went to Vipassana, he's talking, Goenka is talking about these experiences that your soul had in the past. And if someone were to introduce themselves and be actually at the course of Vipassana, them in their past lives had an experience with a Buddha, and they were interacted with Buddhism. And so he's saying that that's typically the only scenario where someone would actually go to Vipassana, because they are resonating with it in their past.
Yeah.
Right. But this is like something that you do for your work of regression and soul history. Can you explain to me how this whole process of past lives and it's in a practical way that makes the most sense? It's still kind of the only thing that's kind of, I guess, blank on the thing that I'm not fully grasping on this is just the whole concept that I can actually have past lives. It's because I would say there's even in the Western culture, there's this idea that your soul is only got this one life, and it's come to experience it through your body. And so the life's purpose, you could say, is to experience life fully, let your soul experience this life fully so it can go back to where it came from. And that's the end of it. That's how can you kind of add to that, disprove it, or change that story?
I think this is like kind of coming back to this whole belief that like some stuff makes sense to people, some stuff doesn't make sense to people. All is good. And I think for me, when I got into my journey, I was introduced to past lives, and I was like, it makes perfect sense. I don't know why it makes sense, but for me, it was like I just felt in my body and my heart like this makes perfect sense. I buy it at face value. And I think it's like the moment you start realizing like past lives, it's like, yeah, like, you know, why did I feel inspired to do sales out of the blue? Why did I feel like becoming a painter or a musician or travel to Asia? And whenever I come to Asia, it feels like home. I've never been to Asia before, so how can it feel like home? Or when you meet a person, you're like, oh, this one feels like a sister. And then you meet another person, it's like, oh, she feels like an aunt. And then you meet another person, you're like, oh, I feel really attracted to this person, but I don't know why. Like, she just feels very familiar. Like, we've had a lot of conversations. And it's like, when you start becoming attentive to all of these things, you start realizing, like, there must be more. Like, I mean, you can say, like, everything is just chance. And yeah, it just seems impossible, right? It's like, you start realizing, like, how connected we are with the rest of the world. And you start making sense of like, well, actually, having past lives where you and we met in a past life, and the last time we met, we were probably siblings, because I feel like you're my little brother, and it's like I don't think about you being my little brother, but that's just like the feeling. Like whenever I think about you as the little brother,
Wow.
and I never felt that before I met you. So obviously, if I would have scrolled you on Facebook, I would never have been like, Sam is my little brother, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you start realizing these ways that like your soul is telling you, like, you're actually a lot more connected and there's a bigger community around you at all times of your life than you realize. And I think for me, it was like, I went through depression and I went through feeling super lonely. And I always felt it's like, where are my people?
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like paradoxically, I felt so alone being back in Norway. But when I came to Asia, I felt like home. So I had to leave the country where I grew up, and I have all my friends and my family and everything I know. And then I had to go around the world to the other side of the world, where I also found my girlfriend, and I found Asia, and it was just this like feeling of coming home.
Yeah.
And just in my heart, I just knew. And I think that's the really cool thing. And as I moved along this healing journey, everyone feels like home. Everyone feels like sister, brother, neighbor, mayor, someone I killed in a past life,
Really?
Yeah, so it's like I've seen like me having really intense experiences with Tim,
Yeah.
which is the guy I'm staying with now, a common friend of ours. And I've seen like he killed me in a past life. I've killed him in a past life.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just really fascinating. And you start realizing like if you feel really drawn to yoga and you feel really drawn to Buddhism and you feel really drawn to Chinese food and you've never done either of it, then the thesis about past lives starts making sense.
Hmm. But there's billions of people in the world, right? So how does that make sense for someone to be in line and being able to have conversations with someone and realizing like, wow, I know that I've met this person before.
Synchronicities.
So, because for example, a stranger on the street that you don't connect with, this is just a soul that you've never been in contact with before, right? And so basically, the better in touch you are with someone, or the better relationship you have with someone, the more experiences you've had with them, your soul has had with them.
Yeah. More significant of a role they played in your life.
Your soul's life.
Yeah.
Right. And this is why as soon as you meet your soulmate, supposedly, or just a person that you have, just a random friend, like I'm able to pick up with you and other people that I don't see for so long. I just saw my friend, I haven't seen him in a month. And it's like we pick up like nothing ever. It's like we saw each other yesterday, basically.
Yeah.
You know, we say our hugs and say like, man, I missed you. I missed your energy. I mean, you know, I miss being around you. But the way that we treat each other is still the same. And this is, so then so even with like families, I'm looking at families now too, where maybe the relationship that people have with their families is they've had these experiences. This is why your brother just feels like your best friend, where it's like you were really good friends in the past lives. But then there's also families that have really bad relationships and they steal from one another. They despise one another. They beat one another. They must have never liked each other in their past lives, or they're just completely new to one another as a soul. Right? Is this the correlation that you're talking about?
Yeah. So it's like, imagine like there's, you have to realize you're not just in a family. Like this is the thing that I think like a lot of people miss out on the fun part about past lives, which is like the more you become in touch with yourself, the more you start realizing how present your soul history is in your reality at all times. This is good and bad. Like it creates a lot of tension, but it also creates a lot of happiness or exciting opportunities, right? So if you have a lot of tension in your family, it's probably because the most recent experience you had with this family was tension. So that is your karmic lesson in this experience, is like you guys had a lot of tension. Maybe you killed your mom or she killed you, and now you get to experience the other side of that. How it is to be on the receiving end or the giving end of something. So to use your infamous phrase of Isaac Newton, there's always an action and equal reaction. So it's like you get to experience the giving side and you get to experience the receiving side. And you will always have this relationship with people. So it's like, if there is karma to experience, you will experience it, but it's not like you kill someone and then you come back as an ant. That's not really how this works, because that doesn't provide any perspective. So you have to understand the reason in my world, the reason why we have different lives and past lives and why it makes sense is because we're here to experience as many different colors and fragrances and depth and perspectives as humanly possible within as short period of time as possible. So if you think about, we're 7 billion people. Over the course of millennia, over the course of thousands of years, statistically speaking, bumping into each other through either a village or through whatever is not that hard. Practically, like if you have enough time, getting to know everyone is not that hard. But then you also have to realize in the beginning there were fewer people, you know? So we've grown to they've added more souls that you maybe didn't have a Earth incarnation with, but you met them in your star system.
So it's just like you're able to add soul, like God is just able to add souls.
Yeah, because the Earth is a place for you to reincarnate and to have experiences of a certain caliber. So of course, you know, in the beginning when Earth was really young, it was more like a training ground, and you had to like perfect like how do you make the perfect human, right? So if you buy into this whole thing that like we all came from the stars, then we are a mix of all star beings, beings from Jupiter, being from Mars, being from other places. And they all come here to clear up their karmic debt.
Their karmic debt.
Yeah.
Huh. Because it's such a intense experience to be a human.
Yeah. It's the most intense experience because it's so dark.
It's all suffering.
Yeah.
You know, I learned that in my Vipassana retreat, and I really made a lot of sense to me of how much world or how much suffering there really is in humanity. You come into this world crying, you leave this world crying. Or, you know, maybe some people are happy to leave, but it's still a painful experience for yourself if you're dying alone, or for others. It's like the human is experiencing that, and that's where you get to become pure. And so some people don't actually end up reaching that pureness. And so they have to come back, right? They have to come back and come back where the lessons they didn't quite learn. You think they choose to come back?
I don't know. I think every soul has their own journey, and like I only know for myself, right? I can't say like this applies to everyone. Like I don't know. I haven't talked to enough people. I haven't, you know, I don't know what souls sign up to do.
Right.
You know, so I'm acting from what makes sense to me and what I can conceptualize.
Yeah.
And then maybe some people come here and be like, Earth was cool, but I'm gonna go back to the stars now. You know? It's like, you know, it's like some people get into hot plunges, realize they actually want to cool plunges. You know? It's like you don't know.
The concept of this synchronicity of what we just talked about, of how your past lives kind of make up your entire current life, is so it's really interesting to look at in the ways of your interactions with other people. And it kind of gives clarity to realize this is okay for what has happened in our relationship. You know, we've had a battlesome relationship before in our past lives, but now it's like gotten to a point where we're better souls, you could say, or we're more aware souls. But I mean, at this idea as well, how can one soul be better when it's just light, it's pure light, and it's pure, as strong or as dense as it could be? And so when we look at this, it's like, yeah, I've heard in scenarios where souls come back and come back and come back again, where this is like a possibility. But why would souls want to do that? You know, if they're just pure light already, like what lessons do they need to learn? Maybe it's not just they need to learn lessons, but it's just like, I want to experience different things. The soul it's still a being, right? It's pure light, but I want to experience what it's like to be a human in this person, Casper. I want to know what it's like to be a person or a human in this person, Tim, in this person, Sam, in this person, Sasha, right? And I mean, there's also this idea of people coming back as plants or animals. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, or how it can kind of make sense. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? this idea of coming back, it's I'm forgetting the word, coming back to life, but as
Reincarnated.
reincarnation, yes, as a different being, not as a human, as a cow or as a snake.
I think this all comes really back to like, what do you want to like? Okay, you have to put in perspective. If someone created elephants in their image, then surely someone must be looking like an elephant in the stars, right? Because
Interesting.
someone created humans in their image, meaning that we must look like some star beings. But someone created crocodiles, someone created birds, someone created dogs, right? So someone created these in their image. So obviously they must be looking like these people. So maybe they came here to experience a human dog life. Because back home, they can't experience being a human dog because they will be a Jupiter dog. I don't know. You know?
Mm.
So like you have to realize, like, first thing first, humans are not the only ones reincarnated. And secondly, if everyone is here to gain perspective, it doesn't really matter if you're a bird or a human, because in the end you're here to experience different things. And a plant, there are people that can talk to plants. So it's just because we can't perceive it, most of us, then, you know, of course, being a plant is as valuable as being a human or a turtle or a leaf on a tree.
Yeah.
I know there's only a hierarchy if you make one.
Yeah.
But if everything is just here to experience, then it doesn't really matter if maybe a human came here to be an elephant. I don't know. I never talked to an elephant about this.
Mm. But if people connect with certain things and are able to talk to trees or talk to, just be able to understand certain animals or things, it's because their soul has that experience
Yeah.
of being that in a past life, maybe.
Yeah.
Because everything is living.
Yeah.
It really is living.
Yeah.
This plant is living.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's taking the light from the sun.
Yeah.
And that's why it's able to grow like this. What power do we have? Does such a divine energy have to be able to create such a thing like a plant and actually have it live and grow up as a small seed?
Yeah.
You know, that is such an intense thing. It's such a powerful and an interesting concept. And it's comes together to really understand more about the soul, more about what it is like to experience being human, or just getting more depth as a soul. I mean, for your example, like for you, I'm curious, you know, what do you think your soul's mission is? You know, we could say our soul wants to experience, but how much experience does a soul need to have? Or does it just enjoy the process of suffering and going through this whole idea of talking, or just being a plant, being different things, different beings, different. What does your soul want?
I think my soul wants to do what it's doing now and just continue doing that, enjoying the things that are, you know? But I think something I really want to like emphasize though is like, in my world, there is no suffering, because suffering implies that there was no choice. But if you chose to be in a suffering situation, then you are empowered in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be suffering if you chose it yourself, you know? So you chose to go through the painful experience, and that's what it was. It was a painful experience, a window for you to grow, a window for you to experience the depth and the highs and everything, right?
Yeah.
And the really cool thing that's been coming to me over the last few days is that if you imagine like a matrix, maybe not a matrix, like let's just say a matrix where there's God on top and God split into two, light and dark.
Okay.
And these split into more smaller parts. So of every aspect, there is darkness. Of every light, there is darkness.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang, right? So the thing is, like, what you will come to realize is that we don't want to look at our darkness, but the darkness shaped who we are. You can't experience happiness if you don't know sadness. You can't experience, you know, pain if you never experience, like, you can't experience healing if you never experience pain.
Yeah.
So it's this inclusive relationship that you don't understand. We tend to like maybe underestimate or not really conceptualize it, because it's like, why would you come to Earth and have the most painful experience that you can ever imagine, and you chose it willingly, right? That doesn't make sense. It's like why would you run yourself over with a car? It's like, you wouldn't do that. But then, of course, you wouldn't be sitting in the car when someone would run you over. Someone else would run you over, right? So that's, you take away that part of this, I guess. But it's like, you have to like really like understand of like, there's so much power when you realize that you came here to experience the amazingness of being human, and the colorfulness, right? Like, I was having this conversation with my girlfriend. I was like, isn't it such a crazy thing? You come to Earth to make babies with each other and to create businesses and start a garden and eat plants and, talk about politics and pollute and live in trash and pee and poop. It's a crazy, weird experience in a very beautiful way.
Hmm. Yeah. You have such a healthy experience with your soul that is, like, you were telling me that I sometimes just sit down and watch Netflix for 8 hours a day, or me and my girlfriend are just watching Netflix in our own time, and we're not even together. We're just we're living through our own soul's experience of what it wants to do. And there's no shame. There's no guilt whatsoever. It's just you and your own experience of what you want to, I guess you could say, you've kind of explained to me it as cleansing. Can you talk to me more about this, of what is cleansing, and how can people start to cleanse this clutter to be, because there's obviously, right, the human, and then there's the line, you could say, for the soul, whatever pathway that is. There's some clutter there. It's foggy. How can people cleanse that clutter?
I think like the most important thing for most people is just to take. So your body will naturally process your life, but the thing is, like, you need to be in the state for it. And a good example is like going for walks without your phone. It's like allowing your space to think, because you kind of tap out of whatever your phone is. I'm not on a, I love being on my phone. So I'm not like, this is not a judgment towards phones, but it's just the acknowledgement that most of us are in a triggered state all the time. So even when you don't think that you're in a triggered state, you probably are. And the only way to really get out of this triggered state is to be by yourself, because with yourself, you feel safe by yourself, safer, not necessarily 100% safe, but you feel safer. So that might include like watching Netflix by yourself, going for walks by yourself, going to retreats by yourself, going on a hike by yourself, going to the beach by yourself. Like all these things that allows you to process your life. Because you do this during your sleep, but most of us are so triggered during our day that we accumulate more stuff.
Because we don't know how to detach from it, right? Or just let it go.
No, so most of us don't have this door open between our bodies and our souls. So we keep accumulating, and then we sleep, and then we were kind of like, allows a good night's sleep to process the day before. But there's more coming in than is going out. So for me personally, through the process that I've developed, is that I've been able to open up the door. So I can process being around people. But I also like watching Netflix. That's my processing time. It's like I can zone out and just be like, I need time for 3 hours to just let myself to just be like, you can say it's cleansing, but it's more so like processing, because my body's actually doing something.
Your body's processing, but keeping your mind distracted?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's why actually watching TV, like, there's a lot of shame about watching TV and how, like, unconsciously you're going to wire people into buying more Coca-Cola and everything. But that's actually like, I don't believe in that premise. I think like watching TV is like you have to realize like if you're doing everything in your life from a place of higher knowing, then watching TV is something you do from a higher knowing. Like you're not just mindlessly like plugged into something. Like something is always in the background taking charge of your life.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the thing. It's like when people say I spend my 20s watching TV, and people be like, "Oh, he wasted his 20s." But maybe he needed that for his 30s, for whatever he or she, whatever they're gonna do in their 30s. I don't know. Like there's not a black and white answer to all the things that we do. There's more elements to everything we do than just good or bad. Because the question you have to ask yourself, if I choose to do everything in my life for a reason, then what is the reason? Beyond just like, you know, how I feel or think about it.
Because you don't know until it's actually happened.
Yeah.
We can't connect the dots forwards. It's only backwards.
Yeah.
Right? That's a very powerful thing you said there. And to being able to understand and be okay with the fact that we're in that trigger state and to find the ways to just be with ourselves. We're only responsible for ourselves at the end of the day. I can't do anything for you without letting myself fully being able to process my own life.
Yeah.
If that means I'm on my phone and doing things that kind of just put me out of the zone, my body out of the zone to just kind of recollect itself, then I'm doing the right things. I love this idea that we're always in the right alignments. It's a perfectly crafted curriculum for
I like that.
anything that your soul is talking to you about or just to be here and experiencing for. It's amazing to have conversations like these and to share wisdom about the soul, to share wisdom about the universe, God, divine energy, and the way that we connect with others. Our soul is such a powerful thing that we don't tap into enough. I feel like I've found a good way to tap into my soul myself. The Tao is one of the practices that I've been able to experience in my life. I've been able to communicate with people that are in the Tao and help me connect with that and be able to tap into my soul. And people have that opportunity every day because, as you just said, we're always in alignment. But there's sometimes that feeling that, oh, I'm just not doing the right thing, or I this doesn't feel right. These things get out of line, and it's just the simple answer to tell someone is, oh, you just need to get back into alignment, and that's just coming back to yourself, taking that time for yourself to decompress, to reflect on your life, to set that time for yourself. It's only helpful to really understand what is my crafted curriculum for myself. And then this will make it easier to look at where am I going? What it's so strugglesome, but it doesn't need to be. You've chosen this experience. So live it as best as you can. One of my rules that you mentioned to me earlier is it's when I was smiling at you because you literally spoken out a word that was like inside of my 4 rules to life. And it was experience all that means to be human. Don't know what it means to be human. We're still on our journey. And maybe we've already experienced what it is like to be human many times, but we want to experience more. We want to get more excitement and really have a fun life. The soul, in the soul world, it's all light and fun and positivity and happiness and joy, right? It's all light. It's that source. And for us to experience the real depths, that's the thing that makes the soul fulfilled. at the end of the day. All of that things, because we chose these things. It's a very helpful thing to be aligned with, to align with your soul. And it starts just by, from what you say, just cleansing, taking that step back, allowing your mind to reset, allowing your body to reset. They're separate things. You have a very connected energy, and it's just optimistic. And I love to be around your energy, and it's like I'm always enlightened and feel so positive to be around you. It's it literally does feel like a bigger brother scenario, which is really awesome, man. And I'm happy that we've been able to connect and talk to the open world, speak this out into reality, just with ourselves and the way that we're invoking this energy, because this is something that someone needs to hear, and our souls as well, because as we talk about our own experiences, it allows our souls to come to even more conclusions that we already knew about. As we just have our own conversations, we get to understand more depth. It's a beautiful thing to have, and the more we have these conversations, the more enjoyable life becomes. Doesn't need to be all so serious. Do you think life is simple or complex?
I think it started out as complex, and then you realize, I think like it takes a long time to get to wrap your head around, life. But then as you start creating systems in your mind, you'd be like, okay, I'm starting to like understand like the cause and effect relationship between everything. So I think life is simple, but because of our own mental chatter, it becomes complicated.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is like something as simple, like I have so much faith in you because I know and I can feel like I have faith in you as a soul. So it doesn't matter what you have done or gonna do or whatever. I have faith in you just as your being, right? So it doesn't like, I don't have to think about like, oh, practical stuff, because that's easily what we get into, right? But it's like, I have faith in you as a being. And I have faith in the world as being. And even though I haven't always agreed with all the things over the course of millennia, the way we do it in the world, I still have arrived at this point where like I can have faith in that everyone is doing their divine plan. And then I can be really happy about that. I can be excited for you, you know? And I think that's like, it really like, I think this is something that I feel like is under communicated going on a healing journey or a transformation journey or whatever. It's like when you can really, really be happy about other people's progression and be happy about people's, like, you have faith in people because you have faith in yourself, because when you have faith in yourself and you have this love for yourself, then you get to be, have faith in others, and you get to have love for others. And that's like the really like amazing thing that I've gone through with my healing journey. It's like, you can really appreciate people now. I can take people in. Like if you would have sat in this whole podcast and just talk, I'd be like, amazing. I get to hear Sam talk, and he gets to experience himself, and he gets to share his thoughts. And that would be as amazing as me, shooting me a few phrases here and there.
Right.
It
takes a little bit of effort to get to that point. Obviously, just a little bit. There's a lot of cleansing that needs to go on. And you do this thing where it's like you live through your past lives. You have this like, just you're breathing intensely through your past lives. It's such an interesting process that hasn't quite conceptualized for me, but maybe it doesn't need to be conceptualized, but I don't have any bad karmas or some, I haven't been able to experience that for what that means to me yet. But I really appreciate your trust in my soul and the things that whatever is in line with it, you know. And I have complete faith in our souls being able to change the way people see things, and the making this world more light, making it better as it needs to be. I really appreciate you coming on this podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it.
Me too. I like talking to you. It feels like still water.
Still water.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just there's no rocks, there's no storms, there's no rain, there's just like still water on a lake, and it's just a breeze.
oh, I love that. I love that visual of the still water on a lake, man. Oh, that's like, I'm going back to the States soon, and I'm so excited to have that experience. Thanks, man.